So imagine you're just, walking your dog through this sunny, beautifully paved park.
Sounds nice.
Right. The grass is perfectly manicured. The paths are clear. Um, People are sitting on benches drinking coffee. You're completely relaxed.
Just a normal afternoon.
Exactly. Only to slowly realize that the ground beneath your feet is, well, it's trapped in a 250-year-old war that just refuses to end.
Yeah, it really shifts the vibe.
It really does. Welcome to today's deep dive. We're looking at a highly evocative piece of source material today for you all.
It's a really good one.
It is. It's a transcript excerpt from an audio show called Echoes of the Alpine. Specifically, we're looking at their 9th episode. And our mission today is to break down exactly how a community processes historical trauma. Like how they use local legends, atmospheric encounters, and those eerie stories they tell each other to make sense of a landscape that has seen just profound violence.
To really get in the right headspace for this, let's establish the visual backdrop we're working with for today's dive.
Please do.
So I want you to picture a foggy, shadowed trail deep in the Adirondack forest.
Okay, I see it.
And as you peer into that mist, the trees and the modern trail markers, they slowly begin to fade into the ghostly, sort of translucent outlines of an 18th century battlefield.
Wow.
Yeah, and that image really captures the fundamental tension we're exploring today, which is the collision between a peaceful present and a highly violent past.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because right off the bat, the hosts of Echoes of the Alpine set a very deliberate tone.
Oh, absolutely.
They literally tell their audience to dim the lights and prepare for tales of phantom soldiers.
Yeah, setting the mood.
Right. And they are explicitly focusing on Lake George Battlefield Park up in the Adirondacks. I want to start by looking at this stark contrast they present.
It's a massive contrast.
Because they describe a location that saw, fierce fighting during the French and Indian War. But you go there today, and it's a site for quiet recreation.
Yeah, it's just walking trails and monuments now.
Exactly. But the text actually says that despite this modern tranquility, for many visitors, quote, the battles never fully ended. It's like walking through a beautifully renovated historical house, but you keep finding the original fire-scarred brick underneath the drywall.
Right, what's fascinating here is that friction. You have the modern park, which hasn't actually erased the past at all.
It hasn't.
No, it has merely quieted the present. So think about the mechanics of a bustling modern city, right?
Right.
The sheer volume of traffic, the construction, the digital distraction, it all acts like a heavy blanket over whatever history happened on that exact spot.
Ah, I see.
The modern noise floor is simply too high. But in a hushed, protected environment, like Lake George Battlefield Park, the historical echoes suddenly have the room to stand out.
So the piece of the park doesn't smother the history.
Exactly. It isolates it. It lowers that modern noise floor so drastically that any lingering psychological or atmospheric resonance just feels incredibly loud to anyone paying attention.
Wait. I'm struggling with that a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
If a place is peaceful and quiet, wouldn't that inherently calm the mind of the person walking through it?
You'd think so, yeah.
Right. Like if I'm in a serene forest, my brain isn't exactly primed for violence. So why does the quiet make the trauma louder? Shouldn't a chaotic, loud environment better reflect a chaotic, violent history?
Well, logically, yeah, but the human brain actually relies on contrast to detect anomalies.
Okay.
If you are standing in the middle of Times Square, your brain is filtering out a million chaotic inputs every second. If you saw a strange shadow or, heard a sudden sharp noise...
Oh, we just assume it's part of the city.
Exactly. You'd instantly dismiss it. But when you are in a serene, predictable setting, like a quiet trail at dusk where you expect nothing but birdsong, your sensory baseline drops.
Ah, I get it. So the anomaly spikes your attention.
Yes. When the environment is uniform, an anomaly like a sudden drop in temperature or the faint sound of something that shouldn't be there, your attention spikes immediately. The quiet environment is what allows your nervous system to register the echo at all.
Okay, that makes total sense. It's almost like recording over an old analog audio cassette.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, like if you take a tape that has a really loud, aggressive, heavy metal track on it, and you try to record a soft acoustic lullaby right over it,
right?
That heavy metal track is still physically cut into the magnetic tape underneath. During the loudest parts of the lullaby, you might not notice it. But the second the acoustic guitar gets quiet,
you hear the muffled screaming bleeding through the silence.
Exactly. You hear the old track bleeding through.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize what the source material is describing. The landscape is the magnetic tape. The French and Indian War was the heavy metal track, a profound, violent disruption.
Yeah.
And the modern park trails are the soft lullaby recorded over it. When the sun goes down and the park gets quiet, the original track bleeds through.
Which brings us to the specific phenomena bleeding through on that tape.
Yeah.
Because here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yeah. The details are wild.
The Echoes of the Alpine transcript doesn't just offer these vague feelings of unease. It lists very concrete, recurring encounters reported by visitors.
Yeah, they break it down into a few distinct sensory categories.
Right. So you have auditory phenomena, like people reporting the distant sound of musket fire on quiet evenings. Then you have tactile things, like sudden, inexplicable cold spots on the trail. And finally, the visual phenomena.
This is the part that really sticks with you.
For sure. They talk about phantom regiments of colonial soldiers marching in formation before just fading out, and shadowy figures moving in places where no one should be.
And there's that one very specific sighting, too.
Yes, a solitary Native American figure standing near a statue by the water.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the diversity of those sensory reports is actually crucial.
How so?
Well, you have the auditory experience of distant muskets, right?
Which keeps the observer at a physical distance.
Yeah.
You are hearing something far away.
Okay.
But then you have the tactile experience of walking into a cold spot. That forces physical immersion because you're inside it.
Exactly. You are no longer just observing the anomaly, your body is experiencing it. And then the visual manifestations add this whole layer of narrative and structure to the experience.
Yeah, but let me challenge that structure for a second.
Okay, sure.
If we assume these encounters are profound psychological projections of trauma, or even, literal supernatural events tied to a horrible battle, shouldn't they be chaotic?
You'd expect panic, yeah.
Right. If you're encountering the echo of a brutal war, I would expect screaming, chaos, people fleeing for their lives. But that's not what the source says people see.
No, they see colonial soldiers marching in formation.
Exactly. That doesn't sound like the visceral terror of trauma. It sounds like a parade.
Yeah.
Why is the echo so highly ordered?
That is perhaps the deepest psychological layer of this entire phenomenon. We tend to associate trauma purely with the chaotic loss of control.
Right.
But for a soldier in the 18th century, rigid order was the survival mechanism. Breaking formation meant almost certain death.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, so the trauma isn't just the pain of the battle. It is the terrifying, strict adherence to duty amidst the chaos. To see a colonial regiment still marching in formation implies something far more tragic than, a random ghost trying to scare a tourist.
It's like they're trapped.
Exactly. It implies a lingering, endless loop of duty. The soldiers don't know the war is over. They are locked in the rigid, organized violence of their era.
That is a haunting concept. The trauma isn't a monster. It's a soldier endlessly following orders because the environment just hasn't given them permission to stop.
Precisely the point the source material is driving at. The rigid formation represents an unresolved conflict. And notice the contrast with the other specific visual manifestation they mentioned.
It's a solitary Native American figure standing near this statue by the water.
Right.
Yeah, that definitely stood out to me because you have these colonial regiments moving across the fields in these strict military groups. But then you have this single isolated figure just rooted to one specific spot near the water.
That contrast reflects the fractured nature of the history itself. The marching regiments represent the imported, structured warfare of European empires clashing on foreign soil.
Right, the colonial powers.
Yeah. But a solitary Native American figure standing silently by the water evokes a completely different relationship to the land.
It feels heavier somehow.
It does. It suggests stewardship, profound loss, and a much older connection to the environment that predates all those battle lines. The landscape isn't just replaying the combat, it's replaying the different types of grief associated with that specific ground.
So if the ground is literally acting as a psychological or even a spiritual playback device, it makes you look at these accounts entirely different.
Absolutely.
These aren't just cheap thrills for people who want to be spooked around a campfire. According to Echoes of the Alpine, these hyper-specific sights and sounds serve a philosophical purpose.
They do.
The central thesis of the episode states really clearly that these stories represent the, quote, heavy cost of war on this land. They argue that the park holds the memory of those who fought, and that history isn't always silent.
The phrasing there, history isn't always silent, is so vital. It forces us to examine the tools we normally use to remember the past.
Like textbooks and museums.
Right. We usually rely on plaques, textbooks, guided tours, and those are silent, static methods of preservation. They organize the history into these neat, digestible facts.
Yeah.
But an echo, a sudden chill, a shadowy figure, the crack of a phantom musket that is active, it completely refuses to be neatly categorized.
So what does this all mean? I mean, does it actually serve us better?
What do you mean?
Well, if I want to understand the true heavy cost of war, doesn't reading a comprehensive history book about the French and Indian War give me a much better grasp of the geopolitical stakes, the casualties, and the tactics?
Rather than feeling a cold spot.
Right. Rather than feeling a cold spot on a walking trail. If I want to be informed, why do I need a ghost story?
This raises an important question, because being informed and being impacted are two entirely different cognitive processes.
Okay, fair point.
Reading a history book is an intellectual exercise. You are engaging the analytical part of your brain. You can read about 1,000 casualties, close the book, and go eat a sandwich.
Because it remains abstract.
Exactly. But experiencing a physical or emotional anomaly in the very place where that history happened, that bypasses your intellectual firewall entirely.
It hits your survival instincts instead.
Yes. When the hair on the back of your neck stands up because the air suddenly dropped 20 degrees on a summer evening, you are no longer reading about the past. You are physically reacting to it.
Wow.
The ghost story, or the atmospheric encounter, it translates abstract data into a visceral emotional language. A plaque tells you that men died here. A shadowy regiment marching silently through the mist makes you feel the weight of that unfinished business. It makes the history undeniably human.
That emotional translation completely reframes why the podcast hosts approach the topic the way they do.
It really does.
Because look, if you're listening to this and rolling your eyes at the idea of ghosts, let's just strip the supernatural element away for a second.
Good idea. Let's look at the community aspect.
Right. The host of Echoes of the Alpine aren't just broadcasting spooky lore into the void. They treat this as an active, ongoing communal project. They explicitly ask their listeners to participate.
Yeah, I love that part.
In the text, they invite people to send in their own stories, whether it's ghost, history, or mystery, and they literally give out an email address to collect them. It's the Alpine Homestead at gmail.com. They are actively soliciting these encounters.
Because they are building an archive, they recognize that the official history is already written on the plaques, but the emotional history of the landscape that is scattered among the people who walk those trails every day.
Right, the locals.
Yeah. By crowdsourcing these experiences through an email address, they are validating the community's localized intuition. They are saying, your visceral reaction to this landscape matters. It is a piece of the historical record.
And they even take it a step further than just collecting stories. They ask musicians to send in original music to be featured on the show.
Yes, that detail is so important.
They promise full credit to the artists. And at first I thought, oh, they just need some free background tracks for their show.
Naturally.
But based on what we're discussing, asking for original music feels so much more intentional.
It acts as another layer of translation. We just discussed how a ghost story bypasses the logical brain to make history felt right.
Right.
Music does the exact same thing. A specific chord progression or a haunting melody can communicate grief, tension, or unresolved conflict far faster than a paragraph of text ever could.
So true.
By asking local musicians to contribute, they were inviting the community to literally score the history of their own backyard. It transforms a passive audience into active participants in a modern oral tradition.
That is amazing.
The history book tells you who won the war. The communal ghost story, scored by local musicians, reminds you of the heavy, lingering human cost paid on that exact soil.
I really want you, the listener, to think about your own experiences for a second. Have you ever visited a place, maybe an old battlefield, a historic monument, or even just an empty, forgotten building in your hometown, and suddenly felt a heavy weight in the air, like a sudden shift in the atmosphere that forced you to pause, maybe lower your voice and acknowledge that something significant happened right where you were standing?
Everyone has had that feeling at least once.
Exactly. You didn't need to read a sign to know the space was heavy. That feeling, that involuntary pause, is the core of what this transcript is exploring. It's the landscape demanding that you pay attention to its scars.
It fundamentally changes our relationship with the environments we inhabit. To pull all these threads together from today's dive, This brief atmospheric audio excerpt about Lake George Battlefield Park uses the framework of local legends to reveal a profound truth about how we process space and memory.
Yeah.
It highlights the stark tension between the violent, chaotic past of an 18th century war and the serene, paved reality of a modern recreational park.
And it argues that the peace of the park doesn't erase the trauma. It just provides the quiet necessary for the echoes to be heard.
Right. And rather than dismissing reports of marching regiments, distant musket fire, or sudden cold spots as mere superstition,
Which would be the easy thing to do.
right, the source text positions these encounters as vital vehicles for remembering. They take the clinical, distant facts of historical warfare and convert them into a visceral, emotional language. Through their call for community stories and local music, the creators are actively keeping the psychological reality of that landscape alive. They ensure that the true cost of history is never fully paved over.
Man, it's going to be very hard for me to walk my dog on a quiet trail without wondering what's recorded in the dirt beneath me.
It changes everything.
It really turns the physical environment into a witness that occasionally speaks up.
It does. And if we accept the premise that a landscape can absorb and reflect the intense emotional output of the people standing on it, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. The source material ends with an invitation for musicians to send in original tracks to accompany these historical echoes.
Right, the music.
But think about the invisible music the battlefield is already playing.
Yeah.
The phantom footsteps, the voices carried on the wind, the structured repetition of duty.
Yeah.
If profound human experiences are truly recorded into the landscape like a physical audio track, just waiting for the right atmospheric conditions to play back, what event in your own everyday environment is currently being recorded into the earth right now, waiting to become an incomprehensible echo for someone walking the trail hundreds of years in the future?